They say that these days, there is fierce competition among flight attendants for routes to Pakistan. It has reached a point where some are even taking extra Urdu lessons, hoping that if they get a chance to work on this route, they might have an opportunity to form a connection with a Pakistani man. And the heroine of our story today is a French flight attendant, known among her colleagues for her strength and beauty. During a routine, unremarkable flight, she suddenly collapsed onto the floor. Immediately, a Pakistani man rushed to her side and, in front of everyone, began to unbutton her blouse. She couldn't even move. What really happened? My name is Amélie, and I am a flight attendant from Paris. Flying in the skies has been my dream since childhood. The freedom of working above the blue sky and traveling the world that was absolute happiness for me. I can still remember the feeling when I first boarded a plane at 15. It was like walking on soft, fluffy clouds. So, I became a flight attendant. And for 5 years now, I have been working without a single regret about my decision. That day was just like any other. A flight from Paris to Karachi. Although it was a long-haul flight, the route was very familiar to me. I had a brief chat with my colleagues and went through the pre-flight medical check. I had always been confident in my physical condition. My stamina, which allowed me to handle long flights with ease, was a point of pride. "Amélie, you look flawless again today," said Marie, the senior flight attendant, with a smile. I smiled back at her. "After we land, I really want to visit the famous Zainab market and a spa in Karachi." The flight began smoothly. Everything went according to plan. Takeoff, meal service, duty-free sales. But then, just past the halfway point of the flight, the unexpected happened. I was preparing drinks in the galley when I suddenly felt a sharp pain in one side of my chest. At first, I thought it was just ordinary fatigue. I tried to take a few deep breaths, but the pain only intensified. "Are you all right?" asked Sophie, my colleague standing next to me. "My chest hurts a little," I replied, feeling my voice tremble. In an instant, it felt as if someone was pressing down hard on my chest, preventing me from breathing. Every breath was met with a sharp, stabbing pain. Sophie's face blurred, then came back into focus. The world in front of me started to shake. "Amélie." Sophie's voice seemed to come from far away. I tried to grab onto the service cart, but my hands wouldn't obey. I felt my legs give way, and I began to sink to the floor. My breathing became shallow and rapid, as if I were trying to breathe underwater. My consciousness began to slip away. My lungs weren't working properly. "Is there a doctor on board?" "Urgent medical assistance is required." The announcement boomed through the cabin. As my consciousness faded, I could hear the anxious voices of the passengers. In a normal situation, I would have been the one calming everyone down, but now, I was the one who needed help. I don't know how much time passed. I could only hear someone calling my name, hurried footsteps, and snippets of confused conversations. "Oxygen mask, quickly!" It was Marie's voice. The cool mask touched my face, but breathing was still painful. My lungs felt heavy, as if filled with lead. I was on the verge of losing consciousness completely. The thought, "Am I going to die like this?" flashed through my mind. I remembered my conversation with Marie before the flight. I hadn't been to Zainab Market yet. Was my life going to end just like that? And at that moment, amidst all the chaos, I heard a man's voice say clearly, "Step aside, I'm a Hakim." His voice was calm but firm. In my blurry vision, the silhouette of a man appeared. He looked to be of South Asian descent. He quickly began to examine me. "It looks like a pneumothorax. We need to release the pressure immediately." His diagnosis was delivered with confidence. I heard my colleagues express their concern. "A Hakim? A traditional healer? Can he handle this?" At that moment, I could feel their doubt. In the Western world, Eastern and traditional medicine like Unani was still not fully accepted, but my condition was too critical to argue about prejudices. "If we don't hurry, she could die." His voice was filled with resolve. Though my consciousness was fading, I could still see him open his medical kit and take out a large needle. While my colleagues hesitated, he began to unbutton my blouse without a moment's delay. "Wait!" Marie shouted. "There's no time." His reply was short and sharp. He opened my blouse, exposing my chest. I could feel the stunned gazes of the passengers and the confusion of my colleagues, but this man's hands were perfectly steady. He found the precise spot and prepared to use the needle. "You'll feel better in a moment," he said softly. In that second, I surprisingly felt a sense of calm. His eyes held both confidence and warmth. He inserted the needle into my chest without hesitation. At first, I felt a sharp pain, but soon I heard a hissing sound, and the feeling of pressure began to recede. It was as if a huge weight had been lifted from my chest. With each breath, I could feel oxygen slowly filling my lungs. Life seemed to be returning to my body. My consciousness gradually cleared. I started to recognize the faces of the people around me. "She's breathing!" Sophie's voice was full of joy. Sighs of relief and applause rippled through the passenger cabin. The man was still kneeling beside me, monitoring my condition. "Thank you," I managed to say. He smiled. "My name is Zain. I'm a Hakim." A Hakim. The words echoed in my mind. The ancient practice of Unani medicine, little known in the West. But at that moment, the fact that this Pakistani practitioner had saved my life was clearer than anything. After the emergency treatment, the plane continued its flight to Karachi on schedule. My condition stabilized, but Zain remained by my side the entire time. He periodically checked my pulse and asked if I was breathing easily. His touch was warm, and his gaze was sincere. "As soon as we land, you must go to a hospital immediately. This was just first aid. You need proper treatment," he told me. I nodded. When the plane arrived in Karachi, an ambulance was already waiting on the tarmac. My friends said goodbye with worried faces. Zain explained my condition in detail to the paramedics, including the emergency procedure he had performed on board. "Can I go with her?" he asked the paramedic. "What is your relationship to her?" the medic asked in return. For a moment, it was awkward, as we were complete strangers. But Zain answered without hesitation. "I provided the first aid on board. I may need to explain the situation further." And he got into the ambulance with me. I can still remember the warmth of his hand holding mine tightly on the way to the hospital. Though my mind was still hazy, I clearly remembered his face. At that moment, I had no idea that this chance encounter would change my life forever. In the instant he unbuttoned my blouse and inserted that needle into my chest, he didn't just save my life, he gave me a new one. Looking at the face of the man I had met on the brink of death, as if by fate, my consciousness faded as I drifted off to sleep. When I opened my eyes in the hospital, the first thing I saw was a white ceiling. For a moment, I was disoriented, not recognizing the place. When I tried to move, a pain in my chest brought me back to reality. Then, the events on the plane started to come back to me in fragments. The pain that made it impossible to breathe, and the man who saved my life. Looking around the room, I saw a man dozing on a sofa in the corner. It was Zain. Had he been here all night? The morning sun streaming through the window illuminated his face. Even in sleep, his features were calm and serious. I couldn't help but smile. It was incredible that someone would agree to spend the night by the bedside of a foreign stranger. In Paris, that would be unthinkable. Was this warmth part of Pakistani culture, the famous Mehman Nawazi, or was it a trait unique to this man named Zain? The slight rustle I made shifting in bed caused Zain to open his eyes. He immediately came over to check on me. "You're awake? How are you feeling?" His voice was still calm. "Yes, better. Thank you." My voice was hoarser than I expected. Zain handed me a glass of water with a smile. "Your blood oxygen level was stable all night. Don't worry." It was only then that I noticed he was still in the same clothes he'd worn on the plane, having spent the entire night looking after me. His wrinkled shirt and tired eyes did nothing to diminish his composed demeanor. "You were here all night?" I asked. He smiled sheepishly. "I thought it might be uncomfortable for you, a foreigner, to be alone in the hospital, so I helped with the paperwork." It turned out that he had not only helped with the hospital admission, but had also sorted out all the insurance documents. For a foreign patient who didn't speak Urdu, It would have been a difficult task, but he had done it all without a word. "Thank you so much. I don't even know how to repay you." Hearing my words, he shook his head. "As a healer, I consider it my duty." Oh. A few hours later, my flight attendant colleagues visited me with a beautiful bouquet of flowers. Sophie, Marie, and Julie, all with red eyes, rushed to hug me. Zayn, who had been by my side until then, gave a polite nod and stepped aside. The gesture showed how considerate he was. "I can't believe that Pakistani guy actually unbuttoned your shirt and stuck a needle in your chest," whispered Sophie, who had witnessed it all, her voice filled with disbelief. It was like something out of a movie. My friends recounted the situation on the plane in detail. They all admired Zayn's calm and decisive action, while I was unconscious, praising his precision. Throughout my stay in the hospital, Zayn visited me every day at the same time. Sometimes he brought Pakistani herbal tea, kahwa, and other times he brought seasonal fruits, which he said were good for recovery. "We need to make sure the air in your lungs fully recovers. Since I administered the first aid, I want to see this through to the end." His sincere words made my heart beat faster. "This is just like a romantic movie," Marie whispered playfully in my ear. Although I blushed at my friend's words, I honestly didn't mind his care at all. The night before I was discharged, I gathered my courage and said to Zayn, "You're my savior. Please let me at least treat you to dinner as a token of my gratitude." He smiled shyly and replied, "In that case, how about you try some authentic Pakistani cuisine?" And that was the beginning of our first date. Our first dinner took place the day after I was discharged from the hospital. Zayn took me to a quiet Pakistani restaurant near the hospital. I had tried Pakistani food in France, but the authentic taste was completely different. Zayn kindly explained each dish and patiently taught me the proper way to eat. In Pakistan, we have a culture of sharing meals. It means we care for one another like family. As he explained, I could feel the warmth in his words. Over dinner, we got to know each other better. Zayn had a small Unani medicine clinic on the outskirts of Karachi. He explained that after studying modern medicine, he became fascinated with ancient healing methods because he believed that understanding both would help him treat patients better. "How is traditional medicine viewed in the West?" he asked. Honestly, for most Westerners, including myself, Unani medicine was something mysterious and sometimes dubious. But after my life was saved by his hands, I realized how meaningless those prejudices were. "Actually, it's not very well known, but since you saved my life, I now trust it completely." My words made him laugh. Zayn spoke simply about his daily life. He woke up early for morning prayers, started his day by seeing patients at his clinic, and sometimes traveled to the countryside to find medicinal herbs. His stories were filled with a sincere concern for his patients, not just treating illnesses, but healing both the body and the soul, something often forgotten in modern medicine. The body and soul are inseparable. Both must be in balance to be truly healthy. His words were simple, but profound. After dinner, Zayn asked how much longer I would be in Pakistan. According to my schedule, I had a few extra days off after my shift. The original plan was to spend 2 days in Karachi and then travel elsewhere, but the sudden hospitalization had ruined all my plans. It had also allowed me to meet this man, and I didn't want to miss this chance. "Could you show me Karachi?" My shy question made Zayn smile and reply, "Of course." We agreed to meet the next day. On the way back to the hotel, I felt a strange excitement. My feelings for Zayn were more than just gratitude. It was a curiosity about him as a person, his calm voice, his warm care, and above all, the decisiveness that had saved my life. I couldn't get any of it out of my head. Returning to the hotel to find my friends, I was immediately surrounded with concern. Sophie, Marie, and the others asked again about the incident on board. Naturally, the conversation turned to Zayn. I told them how kind and thoughtful he had been. "So, you were on a date with that healer?" Sophie asked playfully. "It wasn't a date, just a thank you dinner," I said defensively, though I could feel my cheeks burning. "A healer? Even though he saved your life, can Can you really call him a proper doctor? Marie asked doubtfully. They aren't recognized in the West, are they? Those words made me feel uncomfortable. Zayn had saved my life, and to say he wasn't a real doctor felt extremely unfair, but explaining the cultural differences wasn't so simple. It doesn't matter what kind of doctor he is. The fact is he saved my life, I replied firmly. The next day, as promised, Zayn picked me up from the hotel. He showed me the grandeur of Frere Hall and the bustling Burns Road, the magnificent architecture, the lively atmosphere of the old city, and the peacefulness of Clifton Beach. The time spent with Zayn was a true immersion into a Pakistan that you don't read about in guidebooks. Pakistanis value a special feeling called mehman nawazi, or hospitality. It means thinking of others and sharing with each other, Zayn explained. And I felt this mehman nawazi everywhere in Pakistan, whether it was a restaurant owner offering a free drink to a customer he'd never seen before, or the kindness of people helping a foreign tourist find their way. And above all, the warm care that Zayn showed me was a true expression of this spirit. As Zayn was driving me back to the hotel, he made an unexpected offer. Would you like to see my clinic tomorrow? I'd like you to see what Pakistani healing is really like. I gladly accepted, as I was genuinely interested in learning more about his work and his passion. When I returned to the hotel and told my friends about my plans, their reactions were still filled with doubt. Are you going to get needles? Aren't you scared? Asked Sophie. I hear the herbal remedies taste awful, Marie grimaced. But despite their doubts, I was eagerly looking forward to seeing Zayn again. The next day, I visited Zayn's clinic. It was a small but very clean place with a gentle aroma of herbs. On the walls were charts of the body's humors and energy pathways. Zayn explained everything to me, from the basic principles of Unani medicine, pulse diagnosis, and cupping, to the preparation of herbal compounds. If Western medicine treats the symptoms, Unani medicine focuses on finding the root cause to restore balance. His explanations were very clear. That evening, Zayn invited me and my friends to dinner at a traditional Pakistani restaurant. He said he wanted us to truly experience the culture of Pakistani food. At first, the atmosphere was a little tense, but thanks to Zayn's calm and gentle demeanor, it gradually relaxed. When Amélie collapsed on the plane, we were so scared. She's usually so strong, Marie said. Tall and slender people can be more sensitive to pressure changes, especially on long-haul flights, Zayn explained professionally. His explanation intrigued my friends. They started asking about the health problems flight attendants often face, and Zayn answered each question in detail. Soon, the atmosphere at the table changed completely. Sophie, in particular, asked Zayn many questions and showed a clear interest in him. If I'm in Pakistan longer, could I come to you for treatment? There was a slight flirtatiousness in her voice. At that second, I felt a strange sensation in the corner of my heart. Was it awkwardness, or was it jealousy? I was unhappy that Sophie was showing interest in Zayn. It was then that I admitted to myself that I was developing special feelings for him, but Zayn only reacted politely to Sophie's interest, showing no particular signs of encouragement. His gaze often rested on me during the conversation, and every time our eyes met, he gave me a warm smile. That smile made my heart flutter even more. When dinner ended and we were about to part ways, Zayn quietly said to me, "Are you free tomorrow? I want to show you a special place." I nodded without hesitation. I was sure now, this feeling was more than just gratitude or curiosity. I was starting to fall for Zayn and wanted to spend more time with him, and I eagerly awaited the next day, with a heart full of hope and excitement about how our relationship would unfold. The few days I spent with Zayn passed like a dream. Every morning before he started seeing patients at his clinic, he would call to check on me, and in his free time, he would take me to beautiful places around Karachi. Thanks to his care, my recovery time in a foreign country turned into a special memory. We grew closer, and deep feelings for him had already taken root in my heart. One day, as I was having breakfast with my colleagues in the hotel lobby, sharing our impressions of Pakistan as usual, Sophie suddenly grabbed her shoulder and grimaced. "Why does my shoulder hurt so much? The more I fly, the worse it gets," she complained. Then Marie jokingly said something that started it all. "Why don't you get treated by Amélie's healer boyfriend? He even saved her after all." Sophie looked at her doubtfully, but it was clear she was interested. In reality, all my colleagues had minor health issues from the long flights. Neck and shoulder pain, problems with jet lag, and insomnia. Most considered it an occupational hazard, and just endured it. "If you like, I can ask Zane. Maybe he can help," I offered. That afternoon, when I called Zane, he happily agreed to see my friends. He even said he was grateful for the opportunity to introduce Westerners to Unani medicine. When the date for the visit to Zane's clinic was set, 3 of my colleagues decided to come with me. Half of their feelings were curiosity, the other half a desire to try it. On the day of the clinic visit, as we rode in the taxi, my friends' faces still showed doubt. Will this really help? Is he going to use needles? Will it hurt? These questions were constantly repeated in the car. Honestly, I had never undergone a full Unani treatment myself, so I couldn't give them complete reassurance. All I could say was that I trusted Zane. When we arrived at the clinic, Zane greeted us with a warm smile. His clinic looked more modern than I had imagined, but it harmoniously blended traditional elements. A light scent of herbs hung in the air, and on the walls, alongside charts of the body's humors, were books on modern medicine. Zane began by explaining the basic principles of Unani medicine, talking about the balance of the 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, which was a new concept for us. But thanks to his clear explanations, it all started to make sense. Everyone was particularly interested in his analysis of how working on a plane affects the body from a traditional medicine perspective. Prolonged periods in one position, cabin pressure, and an irregular lifestyle disrupt the circulation of energy and blood. That's why flight attendants often suffer from pain in various parts of their bodies. His analysis was very accurate. Sophie was the first to receive treatment. She had chronic pain in her shoulders and neck. Zane began by checking the pulse on Sophie's wrist to assess her overall health. Then, he carefully examined her shoulder and neck area and precisely identified the problem spots. "There's a lot of tension here. The shoulder muscles and cervical vertebrae are constricted. I'll use cupping and massage to release them." When the cupping began, we all tensed up. Sophie squeezed her eyes shut. But Zane's skill was remarkable. He watched Sophie's reaction with each application and tried to make the procedure as comfortable as possible. After a few minutes, Sophie's expression changed surprisingly. "It doesn't hurt at all. It actually feels good." Her voice was full of amazement. After the cupping came a massage. Seeing the circular marks on Sophie's back, Marie couldn't help but laugh. "Sophie, you're going to look like a ladybug." But after the procedure, Sophie's face looked much more relaxed. She turned her neck from side to side in astonishment. "I can't believe it. The pain and tension that have bothered me for years are so much better." Sophie's genuine delight made the other friends look at Zane with curiosity. Next was Marie. Her ankles had been bothering her for a long time, a common problem for flight attendants who have to wear high heels and stand for long hours. But Marie's case was particularly severe due to an old injury. Zane stimulated points on her ankle, applied a special herbal paste, and then used a gentle manipulation technique to realign her ankle joint. Last was Julie. She suffered from severe migraines. Zane applied pressure to points on her head and neck and also prepared a warm herbal tea for her to drink. Throughout the treatment, he was serious and attentive. He constantly communicated with his patients to reduce their discomfort and simply explained the principles and effects of each treatment method. What was astonishing was the reaction of my friends after the treatment. Sophie's shoulders felt light for the first time in years. Marie said the pain when rotating her ankle had significantly decreased, and Julie's headache had greatly subsided. The doubt on their faces was gone, replaced only by surprise and gratitude. Leaving the clinic, Sophie went up to Zane to thank him sincerely. "That was amazing. Western doctors only ever gave me painkillers, but you found the root cause and treated it." Zane smiled modestly and replied, "Both sciences complement each other. Each has its strengths." On the way back in the taxi, My friends' conversation changed completely. Their skeptical attitude towards traditional medicine had vanished. Now, it was replaced by curiosity and a desire to learn more, especially Sophie, who openly expressed her interest in Zayn. "That doctor is incredible, and he's smart and handsome. Amélie, you're so lucky." Everyone laughed at Sophie's words, but I felt a little awkward. Back at the hotel, I received a message from Zayn. "How are your friends feeling? Is everything okay?" His thoughtful message made me smile. When I called him and told him about their positive reactions, he was clearly pleased. The next morning, Sophie came to me and asked, "Amélie, are you and Zayn actually dating?" When I hesitated, she continued, "If not, is it okay if I try to win him over? He's so charming." Those words made my heart ache. Although Zayn and I were not an official couple, the thought of someone else being interested in him was unpleasant, especially Sophie, who was beautiful, cheerful, and popular with men. If she got close to Zayn, the mere thought made me uncomfortable. "We haven't defined our relationship yet, but we have special feelings for each other," I answered carefully. Sophie smiled playfully and said, "All right then, I won't cross the line, but he's a really special person. Don't let him go." That afternoon, I had a meeting with Zayn. He had invited me to Clifton Beach. We walked along the shore, talking about the previous day and my friends' reactions. To be honest, at first my friends didn't believe in traditional medicine. They thought, "Is that even real medicine?" I said candidly. Zayn smiled and nodded. "That's a common reaction. I encountered it often when I studied abroad. But the results of the treatment speak for themselves." "Sophie seems very interested in you." The words slipped out of my mouth. Zayn stopped and looked me straight in the eyes. There was a warm smile in his gaze. "Amélie, for me, there is only you." His sincere voice made my heart pound. That evening, we shared a cup of chai and talked even more openly. He told me about his childhood dream of becoming a doctor, the reason he shifted from modern to traditional medicine, and his philosophy on patient care. Every story was filled with sincerity, and I fell more and more in love with him. On the way back to the hotel after dinner, Zayn gently took my hand. In that second, all my anxieties and doubts vanished. The feelings between us were clear, and needed no more words. Zayn was the one I had chosen, and he had chosen me. My doubt had been replaced by certainty, just as my friends' attitudes had changed. My time in Pakistan was coming to an end. The thought of returning to Paris weighed heavily on my heart. The time I had spent with Zayn meant so much more to me than just a trip. He was my savior, and the man who had quietly found his way into the depths of my soul. During our last breakfast with my friends in the hotel lobby, Sophie nudged me gently. "Amélie, your guy is a miracle worker. My shoulder pain is completely gone." Sophie's gaze was full of sincerity. Marie nodded in agreement. At first, when I heard he was a traditional healer, I was very skeptical. "But my ankle is so much better. You'd never find a doctor like that in France. There's something special about his skill. It's not just technique, but a genuine care for his patients," Julie added. I felt that the once dismissive and mocking gazes had now been replaced with respect and admiration. The prejudice against traditional medicine was gone, leaving only curiosity and a desire to learn more. My friend's recognition made me feel an indescribable sense of pride. "So what are you going to do now? We all go back to Paris tomorrow." Marie's question made my heart feel even heavier. In fact, it was a question I had been asking myself constantly. I had been thinking that I might not be able to return to my job as a flight attendant and had been worrying about having to find a new career. Back in my room packing my suitcase, my phone suddenly rang. It was a call from the airline. My heart skipped a beat. Were they going to fire me because of the pneumothorax? And the call was exactly what I had feared. A representative from the medical department asked about my condition and brought up the subject of returning to work on board after the illness. "Amélie, according to the doctors, there is a high probability of a pneumothorax recurrence, especially under conditions of frequent pressure changes. The representative's voice was serious. He continued, "Initially, we recommend you remain in Pakistan and, for your own safety, transfer to a ground-based position. At the very least, you should reduce your flying for a period of 6 months to a year." After hanging up, I stared out the window for a long time, lost in thought. A life without being a flight attendant. A life without flying in the sky. Losing the profession I loved was a huge blow. It felt like a part of me was gone. "How am I supposed to live now?" I whispered without realizing it. At that moment, a message came from Zain. "Are you free tonight? I want to show you a special place. If you knowed." His message momentarily lifted my gloomy thoughts. I replied immediately. That evening, Zain picked me up from the hotel. He seemed a little more tense than usual. His car took us to a beautiful restaurant overlooking the city of Karachi. The night view from the window was stunning, as if stars had fallen to the earth. Over dinner, I shared my worries with him, about being advised to stop flying, about the confusion and sense of loss that followed. Zain listened attentively, understanding my feelings. "Amélie, sometimes life takes unexpected turns, but that doesn't always mean it's a bad thing." There was a deep wisdom in his words. After dessert was served, Zain took a small box out of his pocket. My heart started to race. He opened the box, and I saw a ring. "If I hadn't unbuttoned your blouse on the plane that day, you might not be sitting here now. But in that moment, I didn't just save your life. I found my own." His voice trembled but was full of determination. "Amélie, will you build a serious life with me, with the intention of marriage? Will you start a new life with me, here in Pakistan?" Tears streamed down my cheeks. In that second, everything became clear. I may have lost the sky, but I had found a far greater happiness. I nodded without hesitation. "Yes, I will." The next day, I told my friends about my decision, the news that I wasn't returning to Paris and was staying in Pakistan to start a new life with Zain. Shocked them at first, but soon, they congratulated me sincerely. "Honestly, seeing you two together is like watching a movie." Sophie smiled. "I guess fate really does exist." Over the next 6 months, I gradually adapted to life in Pakistan. The biggest initial hurdle was the language. I attended Urdu classes for 2 hours a day to practice speaking. I started by volunteering, helping to translate for foreign patients at Zain's clinic. This was my first social activity. Then, I found a part-time job at a medical tourism consulting center for foreigners near Jinnah International Airport, using my experience as a flight attendant. I experienced all 4 seasons in Pakistan for the first time, from the blooming flowers in spring, the monsoon rains in summer, the changing colors of the leaves in autumn, to the first cool breeze of winter. Every moment was a new experience. I spent holidays with Zain's family and gradually learned about Pakistani culture and traditions. Through the eyes of a foreigner, Pakistan could sometimes seem strange, but with Zain by my side, I was confident that this place would become my new home. The wedding preparations were in full swing. My parents were worried at first, but after speaking with Zain over a video call, they began to open up. His sincerity and warmth managed to overcome the language barrier. 2 months later, my parents decided to come to Pakistan for the wedding. On the day I first met Zain's parents, I was very nervous. I worried if a traditional Pakistani family would accept a foreign daughter-in-law. But their warm welcome dispelled all my fears. Zain's mother hugged me tightly and said, "I can't believe our son found such a beautiful girl. It's like an angel has entered our home." Although we communicated through a translator, I could fully feel their emotions. The meeting of the 2 families from Pakistan and France was a new experience. There was some initial awkwardness due to cultural differences, but soon the room was filled with laughter and warmth. My father tried to eat biryani with his hands and failed several times, but when he finally succeeded, everyone applauded. Zain's parents had prepared greetings in French, bonjour and bienvenue, and this effort deeply impressed my parents. "Though the languages are different, our hearts speak the same language," my mother said after dinner. During the wedding preparations, I began to seriously study Urdu, and Zain started learning French. We understood and respected each other's cultures, and were creating our own new culture together. Adapting to life in Pakistan was not easy, but with Zain's help, I gradually managed everything. At the wedding, my flight attendant friends Sophie, Marie, and Julie were among the guests. They had taken special leave to come to my wedding. As we exchanged vows, Zain's eyes were filled with deep love. I said in a trembling voice, "You saved my life, and now you have become the man of my life. This moment is a new beginning." Zain squeezed my hand tightly and replied, "Meeting you is the greatest fortune of my life. We will be by each other's side in every moment, from this day forward." At the reception, Sophie came up and whispered to me, "I want to find a Pakistani man like him too. I'm so envious of you." The news of our wedding was published in the airline's newsletter under the headline, "A Fate That Began in the Skies." The romantic story of a flight attendant and a traditional healer who met in an emergency situation impressed many people. After the wedding, I often helped with consultations for foreign patients at Zain's clinic, and also organized small lectures to introduce Westerners to Unani medicine, using my own experience. Seeing people who, like me in the past, once had prejudices against traditional medicine, discover its value was a special feeling. One day, as I was walking with Zain along Seaview Beach, it was the anniversary of the in-flight incident when we first met. I looked at the city lights reflecting on the water and reminisced about the past. "Perhaps the darkest moments in life can be the beginning of the brightest light," I said. Zain held my hand tightly. "We will walk the road ahead together. This is just the beginning." And so, I began a new life in Pakistan with the man I met by fate in the skies. Instead of the sky I had lost due to my illness, I had found a much greater happiness. A new path had opened up before me, and having someone to walk that path with was the greatest gift of all.